My girlfriend has the ability to reverse time, but there's a catch. Every time she uses it, she loses a day of her life. She thought I didn't know about this, but I did. In her attempt to save her childhood friend Ethan, she used this power 999 times, even going so far as to kill me 99 times. However, on the 1,000th time, I couldn't handle it any longer. I told her, "Emily, stop. I know it's tempting, but I really can't keep eating instant noodles for breakfast, especially with no seasoning. Not even a dog would eat it like this." Chapter 1. I stared at the empty bowl of instant noodles, with no seasoning, sitting on the table in front of me. Emily Walker, my girlfriend, was in the kitchen making lunch for Ethan Johnson, her childhood friend. With a deep sigh, I muttered, "Looks like we're back to the previous day again." This was the 1,000th time. Nearly 3 years had passed, and all of this was because Emily wanted to save Ethan. Ethan was supposed to die in an accident tonight, but Emily had a power that no ordinary person could comprehend: the ability to reverse time. Sadly, despite trying 999 times, she hadn't been able to save him. She had even died multiple times, but whenever that happened, she'd activate the time reversal, going back to the previous day. At first, I didn't know what would happen if I stopped her, so I tried not to alert her. I didn't want her to feel like I was interfering. Luckily, her actions varied each time, allowing me to try different approaches without her noticing. I tried pretending to be sick, calling the police, and even arguing with her, but nothing worked. Nothing could stop her from going after Ethan. The worst time was when I became too aggressive in trying to stop her, and she killed me with a fruit knife, leaving me to die in a pool of blood for days. After a while, dealing with me every time became too much for her, so she started killing me right after reversing time, before she went on to do whatever she needed to do. She had killed me 99 times by then, and she didn't hesitate to do it, knowing that if I died, she could simply reverse time and bring me back. But what she didn't know was that, while others lost their memories due to time reversal, my memories remained intact. I couldn't reveal this, though. Who knew what she would do if she found out? Before each of Ethan's deaths, Emily would always hold him and say the same thing, 999 times. "Ethan, don't worry. Even if you die, I will save you." Then, the cycle of time reversal would begin again. Over the course of these 3 years, I witnessed their deep connection. It felt like they were truly in love, while I was just a silent observer of their relationship. I was exhausted. I wanted to live a new life, not relive the same day over and over. My love for Emily had faded with each time reversal, and today I finally decided to make a change. After Emily finished preparing lunch, she packed it up and came into the living room, saying the same words I had heard countless times. "I have something important tonight. I won't be back. Take care of yourself." She started to leave, but as she passed by the water dispenser, she accidentally knocked over a glass. Before she could react, I grabbed a cushion from the sofa and threw it, catching the glass just before it hit the floor. Emily looked at me, surprised. I said nothing, stood up and grabbed the car keys from the TV cabinet. I also picked up an umbrella from the balcony and handed them to her. She looked at me, confused. "What's this?" she asked. Before she could finish, I interrupted with a smile. "Aren't you planning on driving later? The weather forecast said it would rain, so take the umbrella." Her expression was complicated. She seemed like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she simply said, "I'll try to come back early tonight and make you a nice meal." I nodded as she hurried out the door. As I watched her leave, I sighed again. I hadn't actually checked the weather forecast. She had such a good memory. She never forgot anything in the 999 time reversals. She had never once forgotten the umbrella or the car keys, but this time I gave them to her ahead of time, and she didn't notice anything unusual. She was always thinking about Ethan. Perhaps our love was a mistake from the start. Chapter 2. 5 years ago, Emily used time reversal to save my life. That day, a few of my college classmates and I went swimming in the river. In the middle of it, there was an unexpected flood, and I got a cramp in my leg. My classmates were too far away to help. Just as I was about to be swept away, Emily appeared, diving in from the shore. Unfortunately, it was too late, and I could already feel myself sinking into the water. But then I heard her voice, faint but clear. "Don't be afraid. I'll save you." At that moment, I thought she was just trying to comfort me, urging me not to give up, but I had no strength left. Then, unexpectedly, when I opened my eyes again, I found myself back at the moment when my classmates and I were just leaving the school gate. I was still dazed, not realizing what had happened, thinking it was all a strange dream. But then I saw her, blocking my view, Emily, standing with her hands on her hips, looking very annoyed. "You're not allowed to swim in the river today," she scolded me. "It's too dangerous." I was completely stunned. My classmates didn't know who she was either, and we got into a big argument, accusing her of interfering in our personal affairs. Even though I was still trying to wrap my mind around what had just happened, my subconscious reminded me that Emily had saved my life. So I called off the swimming trip and promised to treat my classmates to a meal next time. They didn't hold it against me. Later that evening, the news reported a sudden flood, and the river had risen by over a meter. That's when I realized everything I'd experienced wasn't just a dream. Emily truly had the power to reverse time. Emily and I attended the same university. That night, I found her and expressed my gratitude. She gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder and smiled, saying, "I told you I'd save you, and I meant it." I understood her words, only she thought I didn't know. Gradually, I fell for her and began pursuing her. Everything went smoothly, and eventually, we ended up together. She had saved me, and now she was my girlfriend. I loved her with all my heart and was determined to spend my life with her. Unfortunately, Ethan's presence shattered that happiness. Although Emily and Ethan were close, sometimes even a bit too intimate, I trusted her. But when Ethan died in a car accident that night, it created a rift between us. With each time reversal, that rift only grew wider. By now, we had always been seen as the perfect couple, even though in reality, we had lived through 999 days together, because of Ethan. Over those days, I had been scolded, dumped, and even killed by her. My heart had long since died in this endless cycle. Chapter 3. I checked the time. There were still a few hours left. I finished my bread and milk, a meal I had eaten 999 times. It had long since lost its flavor. After finishing, I instinctively tidied up the house before packing up all my things. The only thing I left behind was a photo frame of me and Emily. It had been taken on our 3rd anniversary. She was holding me, her head resting on my shoulder, smiling so happily. I remember her saying that day, "With me here, you'll always be safe. No danger will come to you." I choked up. "What if it's you bringing the danger?" I asked. She half-jokingly replied, "I can reverse time. I can fix any mistake I make. I saved you once. I can save you for a lifetime." I hugged her tightly and smiled. "Okay, I'll protect you forever so you can save me for a lifetime." Looking back, I realized that the promises made in the honeymoon phase shouldn't be taken too seriously. When she stabbed me time and time again to save Ethan, I knew that our relationship had reached its breaking point. Maybe her ability could let her fix her mistakes, but that was for everyone else, not for me. If I were an ordinary person, unaware of everything, maybe I would still love her now. But in a way, I'm thankful that I wasn't kept in the dark all my life. I took the photo from the frame and ripped it in half, putting her half back in. I erased the last trace of myself from this house. Finally, I lay down on the sofa, savoring the last moments of peace I'd have with Emily. I didn't want to fall back into that endless loop again. This time, I wanted to help her. She had saved me once, so now I'd help her save her childhood friend. In return, I'd be freed from this cycle. 3 hours later, I grabbed my suitcase and headed to the garage. I drove to Ethan's company building, where Emily was pacing anxiously at the entrance. Ethan's phone would be off today, and no one could reach him. If Ethan arrived at the company and got out of the car, it would explode. There was a bomb planted underneath it. In the past, Emily had tried countless ways to stop Ethan, but she'd never managed to save him. Every time he died, she would reverse time again. If only Emily had thought things through and investigated the situation more thoroughly, she might have been able to save him. Maybe this is what they mean by being swept away by love. Seeing Emily standing there, unprepared, I knew that in just a few hours, she would be reliving this day again. I parked my car and walked toward her. When she saw me, she was stunned, a flash of panic crossing her face. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I handed her a jacket and said, "You forgot. It's going to rain today. It'll get cold. I brought you this so you won't catch a cold." She took the jacket, looking a bit guilty, and murmured, Thank you." Chapter 4. She probably didn't expect me to show up, considering she never told me where she was going. But she still hadn't noticed my unusual behavior. It didn't matter anymore, though. I looked at her and smiled. "When did we become so distant?" I asked. She was silent, stunned by my question. I didn't wait for her response and instead pulled out a box from the car. Seeing this, she frowned and asked, "What's that?" I shook my head, replying, "Nothing, just something I'm delivering for a friend at this company." Her mind was still focused on Ethan, so she didn't think much of it. She just told me to go back, but I shook my head, glanced at my watch, and said, "I'll stay with you. You never know what might happen, right?" A hint of surprise flashed in her eyes, but the next moment she snapped, "I told you to go back, so go back." I didn't respond. Instead, I leaned against the wall of the building behind me. "Go ahead, stay if you want," I muttered. "But if anything happens, don't expect me to save you." She yelled at me several more times, but when she saw I wasn't reacting, she gave up. After all, she could reverse time as long as she figured out a way to save Ethan. Even if I died this time, she could simply start over by now. She had stopped caring about my life or death. The person who once promised to save me for a lifetime was now throwing insults at me and even trying to kill me. How could she possibly care about one more accident? Soon, a few people Emily had called showed up to report to her. They were the ones she had sent to investigate who was behind Ethan's setup. Each time, she had arranged for different people to look into it from various angles, but with just one day to work with, what could they possibly uncover before anything happened? The frown on Emily's face told me it had been another failure. Nothing had been found. It wasn't long before 8 p.m. came around, and a black sedan appeared from a distance. It was the car Ethan was supposed to be in. Emily noticed it right away. As soon as the car stopped, she rushed over. "Ethan, run! There's a bomb!" she shouted. Ethan frowned as he got out of the car, still not understanding the situation. The driver, realizing someone had warned them, knew they might have been exposed. Without hesitation, he climbed over the front seat, pulled out a gun, and took Ethan and his boss hostage. "Don't come any closer," he threatened. "If you do, I'll kill them." Emily immediately stopped the company's security guards and bodyguards. Seeing their boss being held hostage, they quickly surrounded the scene. Emily, desperate, shouted, "Don't hurt him! I'll give you money, whatever you want!" The hijacker sneered at her. "Anything?" he asked. "Then strip down and let me see." Emily hesitated for a moment, but then began to undress. After all, she wasn't afraid of social death because, as long as she could reverse time, it didn't matter what happened now. She could always start over. To her, saving Ethan was everything. Everything else seemed trivial. This scene had played out countless times before. Chapter 5. Every time Emily undressed, the hijacker would make her do something even more outrageous, and she complied without question. She seemed convinced that the only way to save Ethan was to endure this. She never considered any other alternatives. She was willing to sacrifice herself to save him. I didn't know whether to feel admiration or disgust. Wanting to save someone isn't wrong, especially if it's truly for their sake. I don't have a problem with reversing time if it's done out of love. But her method of salvation came at my expense. She saved Ethan 999 times, but each time, I was hurt. If she had told me about this from the beginning, would I have allowed her to let a life slip away right before her eyes? After all this time, I came to understand that, in her heart, I was indeed worthless. I opened the box and walked toward Emily, who was about to undress again. I grabbed her arm, stopping her. "You don't need to take them off," I said calmly. Emily struggled but couldn't break free from my grip. She shouted, "What are you doing? If I don't take them off, Ethan will die." "He won't die," I said quietly. "The hijacker doesn't have the ability to kill him." My words sent the hijacker into a rage. He pulled out the remote control from his pocket to detonate the bomb. Damn it, see if I have the capability or not, he snarled. There's a bomb under the car. Not only will they die, but everyone here will die too. Emily panicked and screamed, No! I'll take them off! She tried to pull away from my grip, but how could her strength compare to mine? She couldn't break free at all. In frustration, she slapped me across the face with her free hand. Enough! She shouted. My cheek burned with the sting of her slap, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. I sneered. You're my girlfriend. Would I let you strip in public and let other men see your body? Emily shoved me, and only then did my hand loosen. She immediately said, Then let's break up right now. I'm no longer your girlfriend. It's my body, and I can show it to whoever I want. Seeing the desperation on her face, I smiled. Fine, we broke up. Her face froze at my words, but I ignored her and walked up to the hijacker, taunting him. If you blow up the bomb, you'll die too. Do you dare to press it? See if I dare. The hijacker roared in frustration, and Ethan, also panicking, shouted, Jack, stop provoking him! If the bomb goes off, we'll all die! I ignored Ethan and kept taunting the hijacker. Useless scum! I don't believe you'll press it. Pressing it means you'll die too. You're just putting on a show. The hijacker was completely enraged. In a fit of fury, he pressed the button on the remote control. Behind me, I heard Emily scream, No! But a breath later, the bomb didn't go off. The hijacker froze, confused. Everyone around us was also stunned. Chapter 6. The hijacker was the first to react. Why didn't it explode? He asked, panic in his voice. I smiled and said, Don't you know about signal jammers? At that, Emily's face showed a flash of surprise, and she seemed to recall the box I had pulled from the car. Now the hijacker was starting to panic. He grabbed Ethan by the neck and pressed the gun to his temple. I don't believe you can block bullets! Emily, frantic, rushed out from behind me, but I held her back with one hand. She kicked and hit me, cursing, Jack, you bastard, let me go! I need to save Ethan! The next moment, a gunshot rang out. Emily froze. A figure slowly collapsed, but it wasn't Ethan who fell. It was the hijacker. At that moment, I released Emily. Without hesitation, she rushed over and embraced Ethan tightly. Ethan, in that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I had finally managed to save Ethan. A group of uniformed officers quickly surrounded us, and a man holding a sniper rifle emerged from the crowd. He was the one who had taken the shot. I'd called the police ahead of time, and once they confirmed that the hijacker couldn't trigger the bomb, the officer had no hesitation in taking action. As I watched Ethan and Emily embrace, tears streaming down their faces, I let out a long, heavy sigh. Emily, I've helped you save him just as you saved me in the river. I owed you my life, and now I've returned that debt. From now on, there's nothing between us. Her expression shifted dramatically. She immediately pulled away from Ethan and looked at me, her voice shaking. You knew? She whispered. She swallowed hard, attempting to continue, but I interrupted her before she could finish. I remember everything from those 999 times, but I don't hold it against you. I just hope you won't come after me anymore. I've had enough of these 999 days. With that, I turned to leave. After enduring the same bland noodles for 999 days, anyone would break. But as I started walking away, Emily quickly stood up and grabbed me, holding me tightly. Jack, I'm sorry. I gently removed her hand and looked at her, my voice steady. You don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. You saved me, but you also killed me. We're even. I've already packed up everything from the house. The place is yours now. I'm leaving. She shook her head urgently, clinging to me tighter. I won't let you go. Don't you want me anymore? Didn't you promise you'd marry me, protect me for a lifetime, never break up? You're going back on your word. I calmly pushed her away and wiped away her tears, forcing a smile. But you were the first to break your word. You mentioned breaking up just now. We already did. Her sobs stopped immediately, and I noticed something change in her face. She seemed to have aged several years in an instant. She looked older than when I first remembered her. After a pause, I finally spoke. Use your ability less from now on. Live a good life with Ethan. That's all I want for you. And with that, I turned and walked away. Chapter 7. I was taken to the station for questioning because I had called the police in advance, instructing them on the exact time to arrive and to bring a sniper rifle. They were curious about how I knew all this. I gave them a vague explanation. After all, a life had been saved, and it was because of me that a disaster had been avoided. When I left the station, it was exactly 11:30 p.m. I still had some time. I quickly drove to a cafe just across the street from where the accident had taken place earlier. I walked up to the fountain outside the cafe, and in the distance, I saw a woman in a white dress standing there. Her name was Olivia Davis, the cafe owner. I rushed over and pulled her out of harm's way just in time. A moment later, a flower pot came crashing down, landing exactly where she had been standing. I checked the time. It was 11:51 p.m., just in time. The first time Emily tried to reverse time and failed to save Ethan, we had a huge argument. I was upset and came to this cafe for coffee, where I witnessed Olivia being killed by a flower pot that had been accidentally knocked over by someone upstairs. The second time Emily failed to save Ethan, I came early again to see if I could save her. Despite the times Emily killed me, I always managed to save her. It became a habit. Every time she'd offer me coffee and we'd chat for a few minutes. Though brief, our conversations were always a source of comfort. She was the only one who kept me going through the 1,000 loops. This time she smiled at me and said, "Thank you. Without you I might have died. How about I treat you to a cup of coffee?" I glanced at the clock. Midnight was approaching, and smiled, shaking my head. No need. Maybe next time. After all, eating the same bland noodles every morning and having coffee every afternoon, even someone with nerves of steel can only handle so much. I was still worried that if Emily used the time reversal again, we'd go back to this afternoon after midnight. Olivia didn't argue. She just turned and went back into the cafe. A few minutes later, she came out with a glass of juice. "Drink this. It's the last one for today." Since she had brought it, I didn't refuse, though I wasn't in the mood to drink. My focus was entirely on the second hand of my watch, which was ticking relentlessly. 11:59 p.m. Olivia leaned over, curiosity in her eyes. "What are you looking at?" As the second hand inched closer to midnight, my heart started to race. If time went back again, what would I do? I was so tired, so very tired. I looked at Olivia and said, "Next time I come, make sure to get me a Coke. I really like it." She blinked, clearly not understanding what I meant. She really didn't get it, but she still smiled and nodded. "We don't have Coke in the shop, but I'll make sure to get it for you next time, with ice." Just as I finished speaking, the clock struck midnight. Chapter 8. In that moment, my heart was pounding. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Olivia noticed me standing there, frozen, and pinched my cheek from behind. "What's wrong with you?" she asked, her voice lighthearted, unaware of the storm in my chest. I snapped out of my daze, realizing nothing around me had changed. A wave of excitement overwhelmed me. As long as it was past midnight and a new day had begun, the time reversal wouldn't work anymore. Time reversal could only go back to the same day. I had overheard Emily mention this during one of her resets. Even if she tried to use it again, it would only send us back to today, and she had no reason to use it anymore. She had already saved Ethan. With that thought in mind, I happily gulped down the juice in my hand. It was sweet, much sweeter than coffee. Today would finally not repeat itself. Grinning, I grabbed Olivia's shoulders and laughed. "I'm not coming back! Not coming back again!" Olivia furrowed her brow and asked, "Why? Is it that you can't stand me or my shop? Or do you think the juice here is bad?" I froze for a moment, then smiled sheepishly. "No, it's not that. It's hard to explain. Anyway, I'll come to your shop often, just not for coffee anymore. I'm sick of it. I want Coke with ice." Only then did Olivia's expression soften into a smile. But I hadn't been happy for long when a voice suddenly called from behind me. "Jack, can we talk?" I froze at the sound of the voice, turning to see Emily standing there. She looked utterly desolate, her hair a mess. I shook my head and replied, "No, we don't have a relationship anymore. You should leave. I've repaid the debt of saving my life." Emily's eyes were red from crying as she looked at me. "Jack, I've always loved you. I saved Ethan because we grew up together. He's like my brother. At this point, I couldn't hold back anymore. Then why didn't you discuss it with me from the start? Did you think I wouldn't help you? What reason did you think I had to stop you from saving a life? After everything we've been through, don't you know who I am? I trust you, but what did you do? You treated me with harsh words, and you even killed me. Emily continued to cry. Jack, I'm sorry. Really sorry. I was wrong. Will you forgive me? Let's start over. I took a deep breath and said, You don't need my forgiveness. Just go. Emily shook her head, trying to hug me, but I dodged her. Jack, I love you. You're the only one I love in this life. I don't want to leave you. Just then, someone grabbed my hand. Chapter 9. It was Olivia. She held my arm, then turned to Emily and smiled. Miss, it's not right to cling on. Please, don't harass my boyfriend. Emily stood frozen for a moment before glaring at Olivia. Jack, is this the woman you've saved countless times, and now just one day later you're with her? I nodded, not denying it. At this moment, it was best for Olivia to pretend to be my girlfriend. It would make Emily let go of any hope. In your eyes, it's just been one day, but for me it's been 1,000 days. 1,000 days is enough to kill my love for you and make me fall for someone else. Even if you use your ability again, it'll only reset from the moment I'm with Olivia today. Emily laughed bitterly. Jack, do you really think you know me? Suddenly, I got goosebumps, an uneasy feeling creeping up on me. Emily laughed again. You're mine, always mine. If you won't be with me, you won't be with anyone else either. You think you know me now? You can find this woman in the future, but what about 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago? My face changed drastically. Emily's expression darkened as she looked at me. I have one chance to go back to any timeline, but it comes at a great cost. If I go back 10 years and change the course of things, I could make sure that woman never comes into your life. Or I could even kill her. What would you do then? I shouted immediately. You wouldn't dare. Emily's whole body suddenly emitted a bright white light. Her hair turned white, and her skin began to age rapidly. I was shocked. I quickly grabbed Olivia, my mind racing to remember where I was 10 years ago. Desperately, I shouted, If you remember, come to 36 Chen Street, Tian City, Jinan. Before I could finish, the light blinded me. When I opened my eyes again, it was dusk, and the sun was about to set. I looked around. Everything was both familiar and strange. I checked myself and found an old-fashioned mobile phone. The date on it made my breath catch in my throat. I was back 10 years ago, in my high school years. It was the summer after my college entrance exams, and I was still wearing my school uniform. That crazy woman, Emily, really brought us back to 10 years ago. It was the summer after my college exams, in the place where I had grown up. It took me a few days to fully accept this reality. However, I had no contact with Olivia now, and I had no idea where she was. If Emily wanted to find her and harm her, she had all the time in the world now. At that moment, an elderly woman with white hair, looking like she was in her 70s or 80s, walked toward me with a cane. She looked somewhat familiar. She seemed to be Emily, though aged. She bent over and spoke with difficulty. Jack, do you regret it? You rejected me, and now you won't have that woman either. I wanted to punch her, but with her current age, one punch might kill her. I held myself back, the anger boiling inside me. Chapter 10. Emily, you finally managed to make me hate you, I said, my voice filled with a mix of fury and disbelief. Emily trembled, her body swaying as she leaned against the wall. Her cane clattered to the ground. I'm sorry, I just love you too much, she whispered, her voice breaking. I have a way to go back, but only if you agree to be with me again. Then I can use that ability again. Enough, I roared, my fist stopping just an inch from her face. If it weren't for your current state, I would have definitely punched you. Emily, already unsteady on her feet, flinched and collapsed to the side. But before she could hit the ground, a figure appeared and caught her, preventing her from falling. Thank you, Emily stammered, about to thank her, but she froze when she saw who it was. Why is it you? Emily's voice faltered. I stood there, just as stunned as she was. The person who had appeared was none other than Olivia. After helping Emily steady herself, Olivia let go of her and turned to me with a smile. You're not the only one who can resist superpowers in this world. Her words made my heart leap. My mind immediately raced through the past. Every time I saved her, she always offered me a cup of coffee. Until the second to last time when I told her, turns out drinking too much coffee can get boring. Fruit juice is better. And then the last time, when she brought me juice. At the time, my mind had been preoccupied with the whole time reversal issue, and I hadn't thought much about it. Excited, I ran to Olivia and hugged her. After a moment, I pulled away. Olivia smiled and said, I just graduated from high school this year. How about you? I grinned back. What a coincidence. So did I. Why don't we apply to the same university? We almost spoke in unison, and then we both burst out laughing. I picked up a stick from the ground and handed it to Emily. Old lady, at your age you should stay home more. If it weren't for kind, young people like us, you wouldn't even have someone to pick up your cane, I said, teasing her. I took Olivia's hand, and together we skipped and ran toward the sunset. So how about a graduation trip? I asked. Sure, where to? I grinned. Let's go to your cafe, 10 years from now. Great, she replied with a smile. Sounds perfect.